Okay, so in here I have already taken the liberty of defining the molecules for us. Okay, so we generally have an idea about a molecule, but sometimes the idea between what constitutes a molecule versus what constitutes an atom might be a little difficult. So in here, what we do is try and understand what a molecule is by just looking at the definition, right? So molecule is a discrete grouping of atoms. That means it has to have a separate identity. So you get a group of atoms, and those set of atoms should have a separate identity. So they should be moving together as a unit, right? So they should have a separate identity. Like you bring atoms together, and if they behave as a one unit and have like discrete groupings, then that is one of the idea of molecules. Now, they have to be stable. And what will make them stable? They will have specific forces that are bringing those atoms together. So if atoms come together, they won't stick around for much if there are no forces of attraction acting between the atoms, right? So there must be some kind of forces, some kind of electrostatic forces basically, which bring the different atoms together so that they don't break away easily. So they stay as a unit. So they should be tied together. They should be bonded together by specific forces. Okay, and they should have a definite arrangement. Now, if you have two atoms, then they're always, if you bond them together, these two come. Okay, so there's a bond. There's a bond between the two, and there's only one way you can do it, right? So bring those two things together. But what if there are multiple atoms coming together? 2, 3, 4, 6 atoms coming together. They need to stay together in a definite arrangement. You cannot just wobble around in that air, right? There should be a specific arrangement to those sets of atoms in there. So when you have these three properties together, then you start forming molecules, okay? Now, the forces are important, right? The forces that bring those atoms together are important. Why? Because these forces are basically, it's what stabilizing the molecules, or what is keeping the molecules as the molecules and not allowing the individual atoms to separate out. So what are these forces? These are basically electrostatic forces. Now I say basically because they cannot be exactly defined by electrostatic forces, like they cannot be completely defined by that. So we call them like covalent forces, right? So there's a bond between them. Now there is an attraction between the positive ions and the things which we saw in the ions segment, right? There's a positive charge, there's a negative charge, and there's a certain bit of attraction between the two, basically electrostatic forces. But there's a difference between these attractions in a molecule versus the attraction between a positive and a negative charge, right? Now, what is that difference? The difference is that electrostatic charges, they do not depend from where those charges are coming. So they're always the same, right? If you have a plus, you have a minus, and you have a fixed distance, they'll be the same no matter what. The electrostatic forces will not change. But for the covalent forces that are stabilizing the molecule, they are very specific to those atoms, right? So if you have a plus charge on a sodium atom, and you have a plus charge on a lithium atom, things will start to behave differently, right? So the forces are covalent forces and not exactly electrostatic, right? Now to exactly pinpoint the whole idea about what kind of these forces are, we have to get the use of quantum mechanics, which we'll do sometime later, but not now, okay? All right, so these electrical forces are slightly different than the covalent forces are electrical, but they're slightly different than typical electrostatic forces, okay? All right, we'll discuss those later. Now, so this was the idea of the forces. I'm not writing anything because it's nothing specific to write. It's like a difference between the electrostatic and the covalent force.